So you've tackled the most essential changes needed to help our environment. You use reusable bags, you choose plant-based proteins, and you choose not to support unethical brands that do not align with your values. These are all examples of using your power as a consumer to tell the market what you want to see more and less of. But what if I told you that all pales in comparison to the amount of money you give to some of the largest financiers of climate change? In late 2015, environmentalists all over the world were geared up for collective action against climate change by almost every major country in the world. This action would come through an agreement known as the Paris Climate Accord. The main goal of the Paris Climate Agreement was to keep the temperature rise under 2 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial levels, with its 14 articles covering a variety of key factors like education, mitigation, and finance. So with all of these major countries agreeing to this agreement, you would expect the governments to be creating and implementing policies to ensure corporations within their countries are in line to help the world meet these collective goals, right? Well, if you thought that just made logical sense, and therefore that's what's been happening, unfortunately, you'd be wrong. Since the agreement was signed in 2016, big banks have invested over $2.7 trillion in fossil fuels. At this point, you might be asking, what do big banks investing in fossil fuels have to do with me, ergo the title of this video? Well, I'll tell you. When you deposit your money into a bank, it doesn't actually sit there like many of us think it does. Banks put all of our money into a collective fund and then they loan it out. They're allowed to use 100% of your deposits for investing and lending. That means that banks can, and do, use your money to invest in fossil fuels, political lobbying, private prisons, gun manufacturing, just to name a few. There's a lot more to uncover here about how our money is being used to fund climate change, and we're going to get into that. But if you're ready to align your finances with your values, I highly recommend you check out today's sponsor, Aspiration. They are a B-certified corporation. They never invest in fossil fuel projects or other harmful industries. They are a member of 1% for the Planet, but also commit to donating 10% of their profits overall. We'll talk more about Aspiration later, but if you're ready to make that step, check the link in the description or go to joinaspiration.com/Shelbi to get $50 when you sign up. In contrast to Aspiration, JPMorgan Chase leads the pack substantially by as much as 36% of global fossil fuel financing, with nearly $269 billion invested in just the short span since the Paris Climate Agreement was signed. And to be clear, yes, I mean the first time it was signed, not when we rejoined. And the irony of all of this for me is that the largest banks in the world, just prior to the Paris Climate Agreement, signed their own agreement or statement about the importance of addressing climate change. This short one-page agreement that the world's largest contributors signed gave very little detail about how they would actually make adjustments to make a difference, but did clearly state that a large sum of money needs to be invested into urban infrastructure and energy. I guess they just meant everyone else except them, the ones who can make the biggest difference. To be fair, they do have investments in these critical areas, but it is far outweighed by their investments in fossil fuels. So what other banks follow JPMorgan Chase in leading the world in fossil fuel funding? Well, of course, 3 other US banks fall into the top 5, with Wells Fargo, Citibank, and Bank of America to be the top contributors of fossil fuels. Can we get a round of applause? After US banks took those top 4 spots, Canada's RBC took 5th position. And Britain's Barclays was the largest European investor in fossil fuels overall, having $118 billion in hydrocarbons. But according to the report, French firm BNP Paribas overtook all other European banks in 2019, putting more than $30 billion into fossil fuel financing. Now, I do think that all of these big banks that are funding climate change while also saying they believe that the opposite should be done deserve their time in the spotlight to be roasted appropriately. However, in a statement, JPMorgan Chase referred to an announcement in February saying that the bank would expand its commitment to low carbon and clean energy. And I just think that it's really important to read this statement and then contrast it to what they're actually doing. So let me just read this statement for good measure, shall I? The new commitments we announced in February reflect our ongoing efforts to help address climate change and promote a more sustainable future. This includes financing to support climate action and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, backing market-based policy solutions to reduce carbon emissions, expanding restrictions on financing for coal mining and coal-fired power, and prohibiting projects financing for new oil and gas development in the Arctic. We're building capacity within our business to tackle these challenges and look forward to working with our clients and our stakeholders on ways to grow our impact over time. If I heard them correctly, they said that they want to operate their business in accordance with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I couldn't help but think that funneling money into fossil fuels didn't align with the UN's goals, so I went ahead and read through them and picked out the ones that I think Chase's actions are directly in opposition to the goals that they are claiming they're trying to meet. Right off the bat, seeing the UN's goal number 1 is no poverty, I don't think that funneling money into fossil fuel companies that are already incredibly wealthy is helping minimize that wealth gap. Goal number 7 is affordable and clean energy, which I find to be incredibly ironic that Chase says that they are trying to align with these goals, considering they are North America's largest financer of coal, which is one of the dirtiest forms of energy. UN's goal number 9, build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. I don't really think it makes much sense, like how Morgan Stanley and JPMorgan Chase financed over $6 billion each into natural gas between 2016 and 2019. Does that sound like innovation, or does that sound like funding the same old to you? And UN's goal number 13, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. Because fossil fuels are a huge contributor to climate change, and Chase is once again the top financer of fossil fuel expansion, spending $102 billion between 2016 and 2019, I wouldn't say that their goals are aligned with the UN to have urgent action on climate change when they are one of the world's largest financiers of fossil fuel expansion. I'm so frustrated by this because while you and I make changes in our daily lives to live more sustainably, these banks are over here making big promises and also making big finances to fossil fuel companies. And it seems like no matter what we do, it's never enough. Swiping our debit or our credit card may very well have an even bigger impact than anything else we're doing every single day. Our bank accounts, our savings accounts are a big part of this puzzle, but what about other forms of money that we don't have our fingertips on a daily basis, like investments, pensions, and retirement accounts? What are our dollars funding and investing in with those accounts? The default option typically follows the market as is, resulting in the funding of, yet again, more fossil fuels or an unlimited amount of other unsustainable and unethical businesses that your values probably don't align with. And in reality, less than 1% of assets in the world's largest 100 pension funds were invested in low carbon solutions in 2018. Just 15% had a policy to exclude fossil fuels in some way from their investments, and 65% had no formal climate policy at all. But honestly, doing the research to manage a sustainable pension or retirement account can be much more time intensive than switching your bank. However, it is one of my main goals for the year to build a sustainable investing portfolio. So let me know if that's something you want to learn more about throughout the year as I go through that journey. But I do have some good news amidst all this bad news. A record $20.6 billion was put into sustainable funds in the US in 2019. This tells me that our actions are having a serious impact, you guys. So if you decide to switch where your money is stored and where it's invested, don't leave silently. Make an effort to tell your bank why you're leaving, because even if we're choosing to do better with our own actions and our own personal lives, they still need to do better with theirs. Every single bank that we talked about today still needs to do better with funding fossil fuels, and us leaving can have a big impact, but them changing their policies will have an even bigger one. Another huge thanks to Aspiration for sponsoring this video. If you're ready to move your money to stop funding climate change, Aspiration is the go-to digital banking alternative. Like I said, they are a B-certified corporation. They never invest in fossil fuels and other harmful industries like private prisons. They are a member of 1% for the Planet, but also commit to donating 10% of all their overall profits. No overdraft, maintenance, or other predatory fees. And the Aspirations Plant Your Change community has already committed over 3 million trees and counting. Plant Your Change is an opt-in program that allows you to plant a tree with every purchase by rounding up to the nearest dollar. And Aspiration Plus has even cooler benefits like a recycled ocean plastic card, carbon offsets for all your gas purchases, 10% cash back on purchases from conscious coalition partners, and so many other benefits, like I said, never funding climate change. So don't forget, if you want $50 when you sign up for Aspiration, go to joinaspiration.com/Shelbi or click the link at the top of the description. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. You can imagine this is another one of those research heavy videos that took me a while to make. And remember, until next time, you cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that you can do. Bye guys.